Okay, let's look at 5 of these products of the spirited in 1970. The number one is community language learning. By the decade of the 1970s, as we increasingly recognize the importance of the affective domain, some innovative methods took on a distinctly affective nature. Community language learning is a classic example of an affectively based method. In what he called the counseling learning model of education, Charles Curran was inspired by Carl Rogers' view of education, in which learners in a classroom were regarded not as a class but as a group in need of certain therapy and counseling. The social dynamics of such a group were of primary importance. In order for any learning to take place, group members first needed to interact in an interpersonal relationship in which students and teachers joined together to facilitate learning in a context of valuing each individual in the group. In such a surrounding, each person lowered the defenses that prevent open interpersonal communication. But there were some practical and theoretical problems with CLL. The counselor teacher could become too non-directive. The student often needed direction, especially in the first take, in which there was such seemingly endless struggle within the foreign language. Perhaps only in the second or third stake, when the learner has moved to more independence, is an inductive strategy really successful. And today, virtually no one uses CLL exclusively in a curriculum. Like other methods in this chapter, it was far too restrictive for institutional language programs. However, the principles of discovery learning, student-centered participation, and development of student autonomy or independence all remain viable in their application to language classrooms. As is the case with virtually any method, the theoretical underpinnings of CLL may be creatively adapted to your own situation. And then the number two is Suggestopedia. Suggestopedia was a method that was derived from Bulgarian physiologist Georgy Lozanov. Contention that the human brain could process great quantities of material if given the right conditions for learning, among which are a state of relaxation and giving over of control to the teacher. According to the Lozanov, people are capable of learning much more than they give themselves credit for. Lozanov created a method for learning that capitalized on relaxed states of mind for maximum retention of material. Music was central to his method. Baroque music, with its 60 beats per minute and its specific rhythm, created the kind of relaxed concentration that led to super learning. According to Lozanov, during the soft playing of Baroque music, one can take in tremendous quantities of material due to an increase in alpha brain waves and a decrease in blood pressure and pulse rate. In applications of Suggestopedia to foreign language learning, Lozanov and his followers experimented with the presentation of vocabulary, readings, dialogues, role plays, drama, and variety of other typical classroom activities. They learned a bit about how to believe in the power of the human brain. They learned that deliberately induced states of relaxation may be beneficial in the classroom, and numerous teachers have at times experimented with various forms of music as a way to get students to sit back and relax. And then the number 3 is the silent way. Like Suggestopedia, the silent way rested on more cognitive than affective arguments for its theoretical sustenance. While Caleb Gattegno, its founder, was said to be interested in a humanistic approach to education, much of the silent way was characterized by a problem-solving approach to learning. Richards and Rogers summarized the theory of learning behind the silent way. Number 1, learning is facilitated if the learner discovers or creates rather than remembers and repeats what is to be learned. Number 2, learning is facilitated by accompanying or mediating physical objects. Number 3, learning is the by problem solving involving the material to be learned. Utilizing the silent way in the learning method, in this learning, students must work together with each other in the process of solving language problems. The teacher is only a stimulator. Gattegno believes that students must develop independence, autonomy, and responsibility. In language classes, the silent way is used to introduce vocabulary like colors, numbers, adjective, long, short, verb, give, take, drop, and syntax, tension, comparison, pluralization, word order, and etc. The teacher provides a single word stimulus or short phrases and sentences, then students sharpen their understanding and pronunciation among themselves with minimal corrective feedback from the teacher's grammatical paradigm. Like Suggestopedia, silent way also drive criticism. On the one hand, the silent way is too harsh a method and the teacher is too far away to encourage a communicative atmosphere. However, the principles underlying the silent path are valid. We can benefit from injecting a healthy dose of discovery learning into our classroom activities and from giving the teacher less thought than we normally would to let students finish on their own. And then the number 4 is total physical response or TPR. James Azar, the developer of total physical response, actually began experimenting with TPR in the 1960s, but it was almost a decade before the method was widely discussed in professional circles. You will recall from earlier in this chapter that more than a century ago, Gowen designed his series method on the premise that language associated with a series of simple actions will be easily retained by learners. Over the years, language teachers have intuitively recognized the value of associating language with physical activity. So, while the idea of building a method of language teaching on the principle of physicomotor associations was not new, it was this very idea that Asser capitalized upon in developing TPR. TPR combined a number of other insights in its rationale. Principles of child language acquisition were important. Asher noted that children, in learning their first language, appear to do a lot of listening before they speak, and that their listening is accompanied by physical responses like reaching, grabbing, moving, looking, and so forth. Typically, TPR heavily utilized the imperative mood even into more advanced proficiency levels. Commands were an easy way to get learners to move about and to loosen up, like open the window, close the door, stand up, sit down, and others. Eventually, students one by one will feel comfortable enough to venture verbal responses to questions, then to ask questions themselves, and to continue the process. And the last one is the natural approach. The natural approach advocate the use of GPR activities at the beginning level of language learning when comprehensible input is essential for triggering the activation of language. There are a number of possible long-range goals of language instruction. The natural approach was aimed at the goal of basic personal communication skills, that is, everyday language situation conversation, shopping, listening to the radio, and the like. The initial task of the teacher was to provide comprehensible input, that is, spoken language that is understandable to the learner or just a little beyond the learner's level. Learners need not say anything during the silent period until they feel ready to do so. The teacher was the source of the learner's input and the creator of an interesting and stimulating variety of classroom activities, comments, games, skits, and small group work. The early production stage is usually marked with errors as the student struggles with the language. The teacher focuses and the teacher focus on meaning here, not on form, and therefore the teacher does not make a point of correcting errors during this stage. The most controversial aspects of the natural approach were its advocacy of a silent period and its heavy emphasis on comprehensible input. Your responsibility as a teacher is to choose the best of what others have experimented with and adapt those insights to your own situation. Those insights and intuition can become a part of your own principal approach to language teaching.